Guys, what's up? This is McAllister's podcast. I'm your host, always, Coleman McAllister. We got a super special episode today. We got a guest virtually. Today we are joined by Brian Bidleman, who is the director of the Beacon of Hope homeless shelter in Fort Dodge, right?
That's right.
Fort Dodge, Iowa. How are you doing today, man?
I'm good, man. I'm good.
Good, yeah.
Hanging out with a bunch of homeless guys.
Sounds like a party, you know?
Well, it's not supposed to be, so I better check the building one more time.
Make sure it hasn't burned down? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Well, I guess let me ask you first. I saw you on your Talk Fort Dodge appearance, and I heard your story, and I thought that was really interesting. So, I mean, but for those who have not listened to that episode, I do highly recommend people go watch that. But what is your journey? How did you get started in this program? And just tell me a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So, I won't start on the day I was born. However,
we don't have quite enough time for that. So,
yeah. No, the Beacon of Hope has been around for the last 15 years and was started by a gentleman named Steve Rowe. And 3.5 years ago, 4 years ago now, he was looking for someone to replace the chaplain here, who was going to retire. And then that person, he was hoping to find one individual that would cover that position for 2 or 3 years, and that he would train that person to eventually take over as director for the Beacon of Hope. So we shared the same mentor, and we came together and we talked over a few months. And so we decided that this was the right fit for me, and he put me in that position to start with. So I was training under our chaplain. I started on March 1st of 2022.
Okay.
And about the 15th of June, the chaplain was going to retire in September. About the 15th of June, he decided that he was no longer going to work here, as well as his wife, who was doing pretty much all the books here. So they decided not to work here anymore. So on about the 15th of June, they were gone. And the next thing that happened was the director himself actually was diagnosed with leukemia, and then we didn't see him for about 2 or 3 hours a month. So my 3-year plan turned into a 3-month plan. So that was the start of my journey at the Beacon. The journey to get to the Beacon, the quick version is I was born, I was orphaned, I was put into foster care. My birth mother was able to get me back at 16 months old. And,
wow. Okay.
We lived several years with just her and I. And I can tell you that we were not even a paycheck away from being homeless ourselves many, many times. So there's a passion there. However, I kind of went down some wrong roads and ended up with a major alcohol and drug addiction. And fortunately was able to walk away from that life and have been gone from that life for 22 and a half years. So I had some understanding. We actually, I lived on the street a little bit, and again, had the addiction, which is something we can talk about later. Most of the guys here deal with that. And then from there, kind of turned into a spiritual journey where I was doing street ministry and motorcycle events for a number of years, for about 15 years, which meant that I was going place that normal church folk don't go. So, and because I was able to talk their language, and that was really, really good. But at the same time, my day jobs were decision-making jobs where I was in a position to be over human resources, to be over accounts receivables and payables, to have a few sales positions, just different things that gave me, owned a business for 8 years, gave me an opportunity to really understand business, how to run a business, how not to run a business. And you put the street ministry and running the business together, and it makes for pretty good homeless shelter directors.
Yeah.
So that's the very short version of that.
Well, I'm, and you're talking about, I'm really curious. I don't think I've ever heard of someone being an orphan and then having, you said 16 months old, your mother came back. I mean, obviously, I mean, I guess, do you even remember that time or,
No.
Okay.
Here's a few fill in the blanks.
Sure.
I was born a twin.
Oh,
and
wow.
I was
Okay.
born with a brain hemorrhage at birth. So they thought that I would not survive. And if I did, they didn't think I would be functional. Now, I have a few friends that still think that's probably true. However, at 6 weeks old, they didn't have any idea what to do with me. So they put me in an orphanage. And at 6 weeks old, a DHS worker told my mother that she could have me if she really wanted to. My mother was programmed by her parents to believe that she had to give me up for adoption, and that was it. There was no other way. So once she realized that, she said, okay, she had to get a job, had to get a place to live, and they would monitor me in foster care. So that happened. They sent me to foster care from the orphanage, and then over the next 15 months, my mother got a job. She got a place to live. She rode the bus. She did not know how to drive. She was 19 years old, didn't know how to drive. So she took the bus or borrowed rides every week. She never missed a week. And halfway through, she asked if she could come twice a week. So she came twice a week, never missed a time. And they made a determination that I was going to grow and be a regular kid and everything was going to be all right. And so at about 16, it was right at 16 months old, she took me home.
Yeah, that's a heartwarming story because I'm sure you know this. Dealing with the group of people that you do, like I can almost imagine that gives you kind of an edge in a way because I'm sure. Obviously you know more about homelessness than I do, but I've always heard that one of the main things that contribute to homelessness is like a complete abandonment of family. Like Absolutely. Basically people, they lose their wife or their parents or whatever. And that really, makes them spiral out. And in a way, it almost seems like you kind of were at that point, but then kind of came. I guess I don't know how long you and your mother, were together or whatever. But that's still a far better starting point than, your typical, person who didn't have parents, went to the orphanage and spiraled into whatever else.
Right. Yeah. And my mother raised me. We are very, very close. And so we still are not still, we're very close, but it gives me a little insight because one of the biggest things that, and it's being taught regularly now. So I'm very excited about that over the last 3 to 5 years is trauma. And people have traumas. Sometimes they don't even realize. And that's not to say that, it's not saying that somebody, they brought up their history, so they turned it into a trauma. No, these are real traumas. And I have guys, come in, some of the examples, never had a dad, right? Well, I went through 2 of them, one that never saw me and one that stuck around for about 10 years and then left. So, so I identify with that. Some guys, didn't have good relationships with their moms, and mine was very rocky at a time. Trauma is a major, major deal. Just to give you, and I'm full of stats and statistics and just different points. 67%, there's a chronic homeless population that's almost 50%. So almost 50% of homeless people that are on the street are chronic, meaning that's the way they live. And 67% of those people, so a high majority of those people, were sexually abused as a child. So childhood trauma is a major, major deal.
Yes. No, I think that I think you talk to anyone that has any understanding of mental health or psychology or whatever. If you, especially when you're a child, when you're still developing, if something that's awful to happen to an adult. I mean, really anybody, but especially a child happens.
Right.
I can't even imagine that.
Yep.
So like, what are some of the, actually, I guess on this homeless topic, because you've taken in homeless people obviously for several years. I mean, how has that experience been? Like, because I can imagine that it's not always, roses and, sunshine. I'm sure that there's some, people are, they're addicts and they're kind of, going through withdrawal, or they just are, these people that are sexually traumatized. Like, I mean, have there been times where you've had to, kind of set a standard and be like, hey, like you can't, like this is how it works here.
Every day.
Okay.
We are considered, the Beacon of Hope is considered a high barrier shelter, which means that you have to be clean and you have to be sober to live here. Okay. So low barrier shelters, there's a flux there. If it's still a faith-based shelter, most of the time they'll allow somebody in that's maybe a little drunk, or allow somebody in that's high but really isn't acting out. For us, it's you have to be sober and you have to be clean to stay here. Doesn't mean everybody comes in here like that.
Sure.
So if they come in here and they're inebriated, see, I just say drunk because I can't speak that well. If they're drunk when they come in, they have to come back the next day. They've got to come in when they're sober.
Oh, wow.
I've got too many guys in the building that, that would send them off in a tizzy, and they could easily go back to where they were.
Sure.
So it's because the behavior is very outward. However, if somebody comes in and we say, hey, you got to be clean and sober, so we've breathalyzed them, that part's fine. But then we say, can you drop a UA? And they would say, no. Maybe I used yesterday, or I used 2 or 3 days ago.
Sure.
And basically what we would tell them is, because they were honest and sincere about it, usually what happens is we kind of know the time frames for a guy. If he comes in and he says that, we say, okay, we're going to have you drop, and we want to see what level he's at, and based on what drug he's using, size, weight, different things that come into play. If he's honest with us, we'll put him in a bed and then just retest him 4 or 5 days later and see where his test lands. So as if his test lands as bad or worse, then he can't stay. But if he stays clean while he's here, then we'll put him in a bed.
Okay.
You asked earlier though, what's it like?
Yeah.
I don't care how big you are. I don't care how tough you are. I don't care how many tattoos you have. I don't care where you came from. You're nervous when you walk in our door.
Yeah.
It's a fact, and you're on guard, or I've had kids come in here shaking. So, it's our job right away. And we connect, when guys come in, we try to connect them with current guests right away, so that somebody can say, hey, I've been here for 2 months and everything's cool, and they'll take good care of you, and here, let me show you where your bed is, and those kind of things. So we try to combat that a little bit with just kind of a little bit of love on our end.
Sure. I mean, I can, I just can't even imagine like being in that, like being in a confrontation, but like, I mean, I can imagine that because people are coming in, probably at a point where they're completely broken. One thing I hear a lot about, from people talking, when they're discussing, addiction or like, success rates and all that. A lot of people say that percentage wise, it's very unlikely that when people are addicts, when people are addicted to a substance or a behavior or whatever, that the likelihood of them actually overcoming that is very slim.
Sure.
And that's not to put anything disparaging on you guys or like your organization or anything like that at all. Like
we know the numbers.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, you're a stat guy, so yeah, of course you probably know more than I do.
We know the numbers. We have to know the numbers.
Yeah.
But here's what I can tell you about that.
Okay.
being in recovery myself, as well as my intake managers got 21 years clean, and my chaplain's actually got 33 years clean.
Nice.
And he was a junkie's junkie, So we understand, we know, and we know the chances are slim. However, they are much better in a faith-based setting. We're a Christian shelter, and it may not, which is not, I don't know, some people probably just turned your podcast off, but the reality is a spiritual life. Harvard's actually even doing a study that having a spiritual life elevates those statistics quickly. So people that come to know some sort of faith and are able to hold on to that, a lot of times that will replace their addiction. So that's one of the reasons. I mean, that's not the only reason, but that's one of the reasons we're set up that way. And for another fact that you probably heard on the Talk Fort Dodge is 75% of the shelters in the United States are Christian based. Mm-hmm. So we're pretty much the last line of defense. So a lot of times they're ready and open to hear what we have to say.
Okay. So what do you think causes homelessness? That's a broad question, but I mean, what would, I know we already kind of talked about the trauma and the separation of family and all that, but like, do you think that there's something that is like more prevalent than others, or do you think it's just a cocktail things? I guess what's your assertion on that?
So 80% of the men that are in my building either suffer from an addiction or mental health issues. Now we'll get the number going really well. 80% of those men deal with both. That is the primary reason for, it's not the reason for homelessness. The reason for homelessness is broken relationships. The way those relationships got broken is predominantly untreated mental health and untreated addiction.
Okay.
So, so it's the study of relationships that is the important thing. And that's the important thing on our end, is because if we can establish a trusting relationship with them going both ways, we have a better shot at really actually helping a guy. And
okay.
Unfortunately, the numbers are still, we'll call them slender. But we do have a much better shot at a guy. And the longer he stays here, really the better off he is, because a standard treatment center today, if he would just go to treatment, it would be 18 days and out if it's a government funded treatment center.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that there is, like, when you look at both addiction and mental health, do you think that there is a correlation between those two? Do you think that it's just kind of, they just go hand in hand? Because I wonder if the mental health problem kind of precludes the addiction. Because I think there are people who do not have mental illness who could use those substances and contribute to society, live a quote unquote normal life, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I guess what are your thoughts about that? Do you think that they...
I'm not against medical use of certain things, we'll call it.
Sure.
However, in the right form and in the right way. So what I would tell you is it's been a common known fact for many, many years that mental health issues will exacerbate, I guess would be the fancy word, street drug use.
Sure.
Example. And this will go back to the other side, which is addictions with the wrong kind of things can lead to mental health issues. Here's the issue. What we find is if someone's schizophrenic, meth on the street will help them in an immediate sense. Okay. However, Meth overused over a long period of time will cause psychosis, which means they'll end up hearing voices just like if they started as a schizophrenic. And the schizophrenic, although he feels better in the short term, eventually it's way worse. So the fact that mental health, to go to your question, if somebody's recreational and it's not a constant issue, then yeah, most likely they'd be fine. But if they're using those things in any way to mask how they feel or what they think, that's where it becomes difficult.
Okay. So, but like you're a believer that the drug use kind of precludes the mental illness in a sense, or do you think that the mental illness is just
both ways?
Okay.
Yeah. The drug use, if you're an active meth user and you use over a long period of time or use extensively, the easy answer is eventually that'll end up in psychosis. I've had mental health counselors, mental health doctors, all kinds of people from all kinds of places would give you the same answer. So it's in the overuse. Okay. Now, I'm not by any means advocating anything, but it will eventually cause a psychosis that's not really reversible.
Sure. Well, I mean, that's something that happens with cannabis use. Is like people who are now, from how I understand it, it's people who are predisposed to having psychosis. So I mean, sure. I don't really buy the idea that like if you use these drugs you're automatically gonna get psychosis. That's just me personally.
Oh no. I'm talking about major overuse.
Yeah, well, there's definitely I think people who overuse, I mean that's addiction. Right. I think that's like, I mean, for anything, I mean, for sure. Sex, for gambling, for drugs, like if the overuse, sure. When it's negatively impacting your life, I think that is the standard for like, that's an addiction, right? Is when it's even damaging. Cookies. What was that? Sorry?
I said, even cookies.
Yeah. They, as an addict of cookies myself, I can say that, that's damaged my life. Well, let me ask you this because, so I personally am an advocate for drug legalization, and you and I probably disagree on that. For drug legalization, you and I probably disagree with that, but that's fine.
Actually, you'd be surprised.
Okay, what's your take on that then? Let me ask you.
My take on it is, I have to call it by its regular name. Marijuana is a terrific anxiety medication if it's used that way. But it's just been proven over and over again. It's been proven for pain in cancer patients. It's been proven in a lot of areas.
Yes.
Now, somebody would say, but you don't allow people to use that in your building. No, because when they come to our building, they're overusers. They're not, we're not talking
sure.
about casual users. So, there's a certain amount, when somebody say, well, it's legal in this form, and yep, you're absolutely right. But so is alcohol, and we don't allow you to be drunk here either. However, my take is used properly. I think marijuana has a vast amount of positive traits.
Yeah, no, I mean, I 100% agree. And, I think that's totally understandable, not bringing cannabis into that environment. Because what I always say is different drugs affect different people differently.
At 100%. I would not disagree with that at all.
Yeah, it's never a one-to-one comparison, So what might be relieving to somebody could, send somebody else over the edge, right? I mean, I've seen that in real time.
Right.
But let me ask you this though: do you think, and I guess this is maybe just speaking broader to like the drug, what they call the drug epidemic in general. people who are, using high amounts of opioids or whatever.
Sure.
Do you think that, how much of it do you think, like, what perpetuates that? Do you think it's the substance itself? Do you think there's some shame aspect? Do you think it's purely mental illness? I guess, what's your analysis on that?
I'll give you the high level answer. Yes. and here's what I mean, is all those things contribute to that. As far as an epidemic, I live in a county where at one time we had the most women who had their children taken away from them because of extended drug use. And meth being the example,
Sure.
runs rampant through the state, especially in rural areas. So easy to make, easy to get, cheap to buy, all those kind of things. Is there an epidemic? I don't know. I don't know what the level. I'm not I might like statistics, but I don't know that. I would have no idea what the numbers are.
Sure.
But as far as an epidemic, in my building it is.
Sure.
But is it overall? I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to say. It's hard to say how much of that is, propaganda, or how much of that is just, it's a catchy headline. So I live in Des Moines, and I've definitely seen plenty of homelessness driving through downtown. I don't know if you've been to Des Moines, but if you have, I'm sure you've seen that. I don't know how much of that is correlated to drug use or not, but I can imagine that, for someone who is at that position where they become homeless, they lose their connection. It's an easy way to, it's escapism.
Right.
That's essentially what it is.
Sure. What I would probably, here's what my experience is.
Okay.
I told you that the guys that are in my building, it's an 80% level, right? So the guys that come in my building, 80% of them or better, maybe 90% of them come in because they know we're a clean and sober program, and they know, they get a warm bed, a hot meal, great showers. We wash their sheets every week. They get fresh towels every day. I'm not trying to make it sound like a utopia, but it's way better than living in the woods.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
However, if 80% of the guys in my building suffer from an addiction, then what does it look like on the outside of my building? Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. It is the number one. However, I will play back. The fastest growing segment in today's homeless population is women with children. And that is a plethora of reasons, but the higher the cost of living goes.
Sure. Yeah.
It makes it harder. And mom can't go, if you live where we live here in Fort Dodge, mom can't go and get a good production job, because a production job is swing shift, is 2 weeks on nights, 2 weeks on days. Unless she's got a lot of family around, she can't do that. So here she is at Casey's, at the Quick Star, at a restaurant. She's not making enough money to make it go. And that's a huge problem.
No, I agree. I think that's obvious at this point. Look at, COVID alone. When that whole thing was going on, I don't even remember the percentages, but I remember just being disturbed by how many people, because of the lockdowns and whatever, people not being able to work, like how many of them did face homelessness because of that.
Right.
It's a huge, for people who want to solve homeless, and we don't need to like get political on this podcast, but like I do think like if you want to solve those things, like you should be interested and informed on like what your government's doing, because that has a direct, especially with homelessness, that has a direct correlation with that.
Sure. There's lots of things they could be doing, and we keep hoping that day comes. that there's more resources, which is really what it's going to take, is more resources and better math. $12 an hour does not make a $900 rent payment and feed 3 kids.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. You can't, the math doesn't add up. So there's got to be, we've got to shoot the middle. But it's always about balance, no matter what. It's always about filling the gap. And sometimes that gap gets filled and sometimes it doesn't. And it really doesn't. It could be whoever's in office, So
yeah.
The problem, we've had honestly, the growth now since 2013, homelessness has been on the rise at a very rapid rate. However, 2020 and beyond, so for those 4 years, because we don't have the 25 numbers yet, homelessness has averaged 20% a year increase. And again, the largest increase is coming from women with children, which should alarm everybody, no matter where you sit, on which side of the aisle, or whether you live under a rock or on top of a mountain. That should concern you.
No, I agree. And, I think a lot of people, and this is kind of just how the system is designed in a way, but I think so many people just don't focus on what's actually happening around them. People are so upset about what's happening overseas or in other countries, and not that you shouldn't be upset, but to some extent about that. Our tax dollars are going to that, right? But I've always been someone, I on my show, I talk way more about what's going on in Iowa, what's going on with Iowa's government than the federal government, because I just think that's what I like about your organization is I think you guys are focusing locally, and I wish more people did that in general. I think if they actually want to make the world a better place, that's the way to actually do it, I think.
Yep. I could not agree with you more, Coleman. It's, here's the thing. You can call them homeless guys, you can call them homeless families, you can call them whatever you want, but at the end of the day, they're people, and they're people that are from your area, and they're people that are from your area that need help. I'll give you more examples. I've had 3 guys in the last 3 years, basically one a year, that were dropped off here on their 18th birthday because the foster family they were staying with was no longer receiving money. Right? That's not much care for the human being.
Yeah.
I've had guys in wheelchairs dropped off in front of my building and just left here. We just see it all the time, and we see it here every day. So there's got to be more. I would agree 100%. There has to be more right here at home, and this is not, again, it's not a political statement, but right here at home. I'm talking about your neighbors,
Yep.
So I could not agree with you more.
Yeah, it's going to the restaurant and overhearing somebody talk about, their expenses are tight or what. That stuff affects you. You can think it's just the person across the restaurant, but we all are in our community, right? So if the community, if you see more homeless people in the community, people don't like to see. Not that's disparaging them, but nobody wants to go out into an environment like that, right? Everybody would like to be able to be self-sufficient and have the job and have a community and all that.
Right.
Let me ask you this. Allow me to just play devil's advocate a little bit.
Sure.
Because you are a faith-based center. Yeah. You do operate through the
intended there, right?
What was the pun? I missed that.
You wanted to play devil's advocate.
I did kind of think about that. I'm like, is he gonna not be okay with the devil? No, I'm kidding. I'm sorry to talk about the devil. That's my bad.
I'm pretty easy to get along with.
I can tell. But maybe you've heard this criticism too. But not even something I would think of as a criticism. But a lot of people would see church programs or privatized programs, and they would look at that as kind of, I mean, in their view, they would probably look at that as kind of an advantage. Like, oh, these organizations, they don't pay taxes. They don't have to, there isn't quite a level playing field in a sense. Like a government entity, or if somebody who's a business owner wanted to like start a soup kitchen, there's a lot more regulations and things they have to get through. So I guess what's your response to that when people kind of give you that, if you've ever heard that criticism? Or
honestly, I've actually never heard that. Most of the time, people say, how can you run that without government money? Is what we normally get. To the point that people have a misconception sometimes that we do take government money and that we get paid for each guy that's in here and for how long he's in here. No, actually, the more guys we have here, as an example, at the end of August, I had 20 guys. We have a 54 bed facility. I had 20 guys at the end of August. At the end of September, I had 45. Now, if I was a government entity, I would get more money for more people. But since I'm not, I'm just spending more money with more people.
Sure.
That would be the thing. We actually honestly don't get really anybody on that side. We, most of the time, matter of fact, all of the time, it's more, so you don't take any government money? No. Well, how come? Well, because then it would change who we are. Oh, okay. And what we were started for. Okay. But how do you raise money then? How do you get money? We say, well, individuals, churches, organizations, that's how we, fundraisers, that's how we get money. Oh, okay. So you don't get any government? No, we don't get any government money. So they wonder how we make it the way we do. So the tax exemption doesn't cover the $20,000 to $30,000 a year I have to spend on my building because it's an old brick building, or
sure.
It doesn't cover, if the bathroom, if the showers go bad, or if the van we transport the guys in goes bad, it doesn't cover any of that. So, so it's actually the opposite. Most people are very surprised that we're able to function without it.
Sure. Do you, I mean, can you see that argument though? How somebody may, you're a private entity, you have, I mean, I think I saw on your website that you only accept men. Is that correct?
I only have what?
You only accept men?
Yes, that is correct.
Which is fine. And this isn't coming from me at all. This is, like I'm saying, playing devil's advocate.
Yeah, no, you're fine.
But I know a lot of people who are, pro government, pro those programs.
Sure.
I think they would see the fact that you don't have to pay taxes as an advantage, and then maybe there are people who would, people who aren't men or maybe necessarily aligned to your organization who may want those benefits, but they're not. I mean, and they may see you and your organization as like not part of the problem maybe, but part of the, you have an advantage, like I said, in that they would view that as an advantage in that sense. So I guess what would your response be to that, I guess?
I would say, come on in and check the books out and check the freezer and check the cooler out. And that would be the easiest way to solve that. And it wouldn't take very long for them to go, oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, I get the whole, some people get upset. Churches don't pay taxes. Some people get upset that religious organizations don't pay taxes. I get all that. Mm-hmm. What I also get is only 25% of the shelters that are dealing with homeless folks in the United States are from the government. So somebody's got to do it.
Sure.
So yeah, I don't really get that argument. However, if I did, I would just invite them in for a day, and I'd be able to show them within an hour how that's much more difficult.
Yeah, and I mean,
property taxes on my building
sure,
would be cheap compared to what it takes to heat this place in a year.
Sure. No, I mean, I personally agree. I'm a big believer in privatization, and I think you guys are doing a good thing. You guys are helping people who are in a disadvantaged place. Let me ask you this, because you are, like I said, you are a religious organization. Mm-hmm. Do you ever come into, have you ever had the situation where, because I think from what I remember in your podcast, I think you do 2 services a day, or what's your...
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So the guys are required. They're on a pretty tough schedule every day, in a regimented schedule, and there's definitely a reason for that. And then 2 chapels a day.
Okay.
And those chapels are required unless they're working, which a lot of guys, a handful of guys, I would say that fluxes with every group of guys we have. That fluxes all the time as far as work. But the 2 chapels a day, we don't get a lot of pushback from the men on that, because they're ready for something. You said it at the beginning of the podcast that when they come to us, they're broken. And when you're broken, you're looking for something. So most of them take to it. And our answer to the guys that don't is, hey, this is just a requirement. If you want to take what we're offering and go with it, awesome. If you don't, you can stay here just as long either way. There's no change in services. There's no change in help. There's no change in our the understanding that we have that we're here to help them. So there's no change whatsoever. Most often we see guys that come in are broken, and sometimes, honestly, church hurt is also a big thing. So guys are like, well, I don't do no church thing. Yeah, I know. Let's just sit around and talk for an hour, because that's virtually what my chapel in the morning is, and they're pretty cool with that, So we don't really get a lot of pushback that way. They know coming in that, hey, this is what, we explain everything before. We explain it in the phone call. Hey, just so you know, you got to go to chapel twice a day. Well, I don't really do that. Okay, that's fine. It's still a requirement. However, take what you want and leave the rest. We're fine with that. The other reason they can miss chapel is any kind of recovery meeting, whether it's AA, NA, Celebrate Recovery, anything like that, they're allowed to miss those as well.
Okay. So let me just ask you this, because so I'm an atheist. Okay. So that means I don't believe in God. For those who don't know, in 2025. And so I personally am a recovering porn addict.
Okay.
Not and when I say recovery, I don't mean like I'm in a program or anything. That's
right.
That's the amount of time that I've spent working on that problem. And it was something, I spent a lot of money on. It was destroying my relationship, several other relationships. It was like what we talked about with addiction before. It was a behavior that was negatively impacting my life.
Right.
And one of the things that I have discovered through that journey that has been really important to me, and I think a lot of times is something I criticize about a lot of these religious-based addiction programs, is I do wonder if there is a shame element that is perpetuated by the religious model. Just because, not even if you were, harping on them the whole time, like you're an addict, your addiction's bad, but kind of baked into the cake is this idea of what you're doing is a sin, what you're doing is immoral. And I can speak from experience as someone who is a recovering porn addict, like you get trapped in this shame cycle and it almost becomes impossible to get out. And, even as an atheist, even as somebody who doesn't subscribe to that, I think because of my religious upbringing, like that is kind of just so deeply ingrained in me already. So like I do have this shame aspect along with it. So I guess I'm just curious what your thought is on that. And this isn't a gotcha or anything. Like I'm just as someone who is in your position, I'm genuinely curious what you
harder for that. So here's the deal. First of all, I'm impressed that you would share that, and maybe you've shared it on your podcast before,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
I'm actually impressed that you would share that about the porn addiction, because honestly, um, people don't like drug and alcohol addiction, but I would almost bet that they're much more used to hearing that than hearing what you're talking about.
Oh,
You know,
110%.
right. So that and that is, so that's impressive that you would admit that. So I appreciate that very much, because that's kind of who we are here. Is we're always very open with our guys, and it they appreciate that, and your addiction really in one way is no different than any other. You have to find a way to to distract yourself.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and for you, it's more about the distraction. I used to counsel a lot of youth that were going through similar. They just weren't quite to the addiction level yet. As to the shame, what I would encourage you to do, and I'm not encouraging you to believe different than what you believe.
Sure.
It's not my job to convert you. It's only my job to share with you what has happened in my life and how God's changed my life.
Sure.
Okay. And my connection with Him. It's not just Him being this all-knowing being that strikes people down, because the reality is, if you remember a few minutes ago, I said a lot of people have been hurt by churches.
Yes. Yes.
As have I. When I admitted to being an alcoholic, and actually was getting sober, I haven't had a drink since the day I admitted it. Right. However, I was also sitting in a church or standing on stage in a church helping lead worship, and I was drunk. So they didn't care for that very much. And over the next 8 months or so, and again, I've never had a drink since that day.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And that was 22 and a half years ago, but I was shoved out the door. We don't want you helping anymore. We don't want you teaching anymore. We don't think, this, we don't think that. Even after a year, I hadn't had a drink, and it was still that way. So, churches, and you may have heard this before, and this is not a convincing thing. This is, churches are filled with people, and sometimes people are stupid.
Yep.
That's how I would say it. And if you ask anybody that knows me, they would tell you that I will tell you direct, that's wrong, that's stupid. And I would say that, for your addiction, if you haven't embraced that, as far as God, then you've obviously found something to help you. Unless you're going to tell me that you haven't seen porn in 3 days, then I'm going to say, okay, now we've got a different thing going here. But if it's been an extended period of time, you've done well with distracting yourself. Now, when it comes to faith-based treatment programs, unfortunately, statistics speak for themselves. Sure. And they have a much greater success rate than non-faith-based programs.
Sure. I mean,
and part of that reason, and I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, go for it.
Part of that reason is because they stay longer. So that is a factor in it.
Sure.
And as far as shaming, I don't know where shaming has ever worked in a long term, and we don't have any problem telling a guy in the middle of the chapel, if he says, I don't believe in this, because we've had it happen more than once.
Sure.
I don't believe in this. I don't, and we say, that's okay. That's okay. We'll be done in about 15 minutes, and you'll be able to go out and smoke and relax and get it out of your mind, because most of the guys here would rather be in that chapel service.
Sure.
Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I guess the one thing I would maybe say on that is I think part of the reason also why it's so faith-based is because of the government incentives. Not in terms of like that churches are incentivized, but because they have they're not beholden to taxes. that they're just kind of naturally able to flourish. That would probably be my argument. But
Okay.
you know, I guess this is just something that you know, it's like it's like how they say like atheists can't get past step one of AA, right? So I mean, this is always just something through my addiction that, and I think it's different because I think in the world of pornography addiction, there does just tend to be more of a religious bend to that, probably versus something with alcohol, because like there is something kind of intricate to like religion and Christianity, especially, where it's like there is this focus on, you know, fidelity and, you know, faithfulness and all that. So I think that probably colludes with that as well.
I'm sure that it adds to your, I don't want to call it opposition.
Maybe, sure, you can call it that.
You know, your negative thought process towards that. I'm sure that plays a part in it. And I, again, I wouldn't, I haven't been through what you've been through.
Sure.
So it would be my guess that those kind of things really drag you down, and I don't think I'd want to stand for them either if somebody was just trying to embarrass me into quitting.
Yeah, no,
I've tried that many times and it never worked. So.
It does not work, you know.
No.
Yeah, you know, that I feel like because there have been a lot of people who I've helped with, you know, drug or alcohol, or not like I'm their mentor or anything, but just people who have reached out to me, and, you know, they know I talk about this kind of stuff in my podcast, so maybe they reach out to me, you know, wanting advice or whatever. Sure. But you know, I've almost kind of hit a point personally where I'm like, the amount of bullshit that I can take is just become like slim to none. You know, it's like I can almost like tell, like if somebody's like if they're wanting help but they're not really wanting help, like my patience for them has like kind of become nil in a way. Well, let me ask you this, like, so how, because, you know, you said you were hurt by the church, like how do you, like, in like coming away from those experiences, how do you then come to this full form of being a director at Beacon of Hope?
Here's the simple answer. I just went and found another church.
Okay.
Because it wasn't God that did it to me. It was the people standing in front of me.
Sure.
You know, and people are flawed. I mean, that's just all there is to it. And so, yeah, I just went and found another church, because I also knew, you know, you obviously know that things like AA have a spiritual, like you said, that you can't, you know, an atheist can't get past step one, but which I'd never heard before. So that was a new one on me.
Step two specifically.
But that's also somebody that's shaming, right? Anybody that would say that to anybody in recovery, especially very early, that's shame on them. Honestly, that's not the way to approach anything. Because when they're new into recovery, they're hurting, and they're hurting bad. You know, so shame on anybody that would say something like that. You know, but the reality is, for me, I knew it wasn't God that did it. It was these people that didn't have any grace. And so then I start questioning if they really had any God. Because last time I checked, he's supposed to be associated pretty strongly with grace. So, so I just went and found another church.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's a common problem throughout any religious, or really any group in general, but like especially with the religious, is like, you know, it takes more than three. Like once you have more than three people in the group, things are starting to get scattered and evolving in a way that like the three people started might not have envisioned, right? So I think that's kind of like, I do think that there's some importance in that. I can appreciate that you can see that, because like being able to separate, I mean, what you call God, or what a lot of people might just call their values or their value system, or what they what gives them that light, or what, you know, that spark in them, right? The fact that you're able to separate that from helping people. I think that's powerful, and I think that's really important. And I think that's always my worry with people when they, like people who are heads of churches or do these programs, right? That's always kind of my worry, is that they will, maybe not operate in that light. Does that make sense?
Yep, it makes sense completely. Now, the thing that I would finish with in that is,
sure,
I won't change my opinion in that it was, and you won't either, and that's cool. You know, it doesn't mean that we can't have great conversations and whatever the case may be. But
I agree.
if it weren't for God, I'd be drunk. And I truly believe that. I believe that every day that I've been sober, and I have no other way to think of it. And because that's what's worked for me, it bodes well working in the organization that I work in, because that's what we're based on.
Sure.
So, however, I'm not going to stop in pardon the softiness here.
Oh, you're fine.
We tell our guys all the time we love them. Okay. I don't care if you walk in here and tell me and I've had this happen, I don't want nothing to do with your God. I don't want nothing to do with that book. I don't want nothing to do with any of it. I'll sit here, but I'm not going to have nothing to do with it. And I say, that's okay. We're still here to help you. There's no reason it's not my job by any stretch to make anybody believe anything. That's not my deal. I just share with people what's happened to me and why I am where I am. Is that making sense?
Yeah.
To you?
Oh, no. I actually really appreciate that. I'm glad that is. I'm glad that's the approach. Because
absolutely.
I'm sure this, but it could. I can imagine it being problematic if it was the other way, right? If it was, if it was a different person who was saying, you need to. This is how you need to be. This is how you need to think, etc. Or we're not gonna. I think you and I could both agree that would be problematic.
That's how you ended up where you're at.
Yeah, in a way, I think you're right.
Yeah,
Brian,
and we see that.
Yeah, oh yeah, all the time, I'm sure. Brian, we're at the hour. Okay. This is probably a good place to wrap up. But I genuinely had a really good conversation with you. I'm sorry that we had issues setting this up, and usually I can see you when I'm talking to you, but I hope my voice has been enough. Is there anything else you want to mention before we maybe wrap up? Or
my hot button right now is for anybody that's watching. People don't choose to be homeless. That's a fallacy. They didn't choose to have an addiction. They didn't choose to have mental health issues. They didn't choose to lose a job or have a physical problem. They didn't choose to get thrown out by their wife or their husband, or their girlfriend or their boyfriend. They didn't choose those things. Okay. And that's kind of my hot button right now, is people say, well, they choose to be homeless. No, they never chose that life. They may choose to stay, under the radar and outside, but they never chose it to begin with. So if there's anything to share, that would be the thing to share.
Yeah, no, I love that message, because I agree. I do, like we were just talking about before, how I kind of have, low patience for people, because, I do think that in your path of addiction, there are still choices, right? Like you have a predisposition because of mental health or experiences or whatever that have put you in this place, but like you can still make choices, right? Like I'm over this last couple weeks, like I've made some great choices with my addiction. I made some poor choices with my addiction, right? But like I'm not blaming anyone else for that. I mean, I am the one that made those choices. And that's not to shame, and like we've talked about a lot with this podcast, that's not to shame anyone, but I do think that there is. I think there are a lot of people who are addicted or addicted minded out there who kind of just want. They have their line of bullshit, and they kind of want people to just go along with it. And I think if people really want to recover, you gotta kind of tell them, like, I'm here, I'm caring for you, but like there's a point where this has got to stop. You know what I mean?
Right, right, right. Yeah, they look. Recovery is 100% a choice. You know, you have to make a decision. If you don't make a decision, you're just going to keep going back to the same trough.
Yeah, 100%. All right, Brian, this was awesome. I wish you well, man. It's the Beacon of Hope homeless shelter, and people can donate to that and volunteer if they would like to.
Yep, it's the easiest way to get through that is just beaconofhopeshelter.com.
Okay, awesome. And
there's volunteer pages, funding pages, information, whatever you need.
Awesome. And we'll put a link for that in the description. Okay. Guys, McAllister's podcast, you know what's up. Stay tuned. Later this week, that when it drops, we are going to be doing episode 250. We're going to be doing a special live stream. I'm going to have a couple of the homies over, and we're going to have a good time with that. So if you're watching, listening to this, come back Friday at 7 p.m. and we'll be doing that. So, all right. Have a good night, everybody. Peace.